Our top story tonight, kids. Hey class, Mr. G here. Today we're going to be getting into photography some more. Today is going to be about photo manipulations and going into some details on it. So New South Wales, they have a set of curriculum that I printed off online. This is their knowledge and skills in the creative arts. And we'll be using this as my outline for this series of videos. So we're gonna be dealing with some photography, some computer stuff, and how we kind of structure that. Now, as always, I tell my students, have a sketchbook. This is my playbook, what I'm gonna be doing with for YouTube. This is my overview. In here, I've jotted down ideas about what I'm gonna shoot, how I'm gonna shoot it, and what images I'm gonna snip together. So I had a student help me out with this, take some pictures. They were doing stuff for their portfolio work. I needed a couple models just to go through for this photo manipulation piece. And what we're doing is we're marrying those images together. We're marrying how these images stack together in the concept. So the first unit that's in the curriculum is, the first unit that we're working on is seeing through the frame. Now, one of the best things I love about this is they made a Pinterest board. I'm gonna put it in the description below. Go check it out to see the different ideas and the different projects that they're doing, but I'm giving you the overview, the tools to get through those projects. So dealing with photography and digital media is how we're incorporating these elements together and how we're going to marry them to create our one image. Now, specifically in their curriculum, they do say Photoshop, and I have Photoshop, so I'll be using Photoshop. So while you're watching this, that's the program that I'm using. There are other programs out there. GIMP is a great free alternative. There's also Pixlr and a few other free photo editing programs online. Just do some Google searches, find what you can find. For this, I am using Lightroom and I'm also using Photoshop. Reason I use Lightroom is because I like to edit my photos in Lightroom. It's a lot more straightforward, simpler process. It just works a lot better. That is me. That is how I work. You can do everything in Photoshop, but you do have to remember these basic caveats. If you're in Lightroom, Lightroom is a non-destructive process, which means everything that you're doing to that image does not affect the original image. Photoshop is different. Photoshop is a destructive process, so every layer that you are creating is above the image, but it's all going to be sandwiched back down on the original image. It's going to resave that depending on how you save the structure. If you're working in Lightroom and you want to safeguard, I make a duplicate folder of my images so that I know that I have an original set of batch images that are clean and not touched, and those work really well. For this project, we're making 3 different pieces. The first piece is basically cut and dry level 1 of what the program that they're working on here is, which is seeing through the frame. That image basically breaks down to, you have a model in a space and there is a mirror, a frame, some sort of object is covering them in front of them, and you want to be able to not see the person but see what's behind them. That's the concept of this tutorial. Next one, level 2, is where we're going to start manipulating that same image, except we're going to be putting 2 different images in there. We're going to give a little bit of light structure around it. So let's go in and deep dive into how this project works.
So we're going to jump into Photoshop now, and as we pull in our image, again, just drag and drop those images from your wherever you got them saved. First, we're going to highlight and outline with the marching ants all the different sections of the image that we want to keep. Now, this is imperative that you're using that quick select tool. I just find it easier. It's a lot more friendly to use. Turn that into a mask. I always select it as a different layer mask and keep it isolated by itself. Afterwards, go around and clean up, just so we're just using a little bit of white to go around and chase out any of our sections of our image that have kind of carried over. We want to try and get it as clean as possible. I do try and get a feathered edge on these kinds of brushes. Don't use a hard edge brush for this, so that way it'll kind of mirror into the background a little easier. Notice how I'm zooming in to get all those little fine details. Now, there are other ways to do this. This way, I'm doing it simply as a tutorial for students to understand why you're masking, why you're taking sections away. Yeah, there's faster ways to do this. This is a longer process. However, it's a much better learning process. That's why we're using this method. And again, you're just trying to isolate all those different sections, kind of go around, take your time, spend a minute to actually get in all the little nooks and crannies, and just going around and chasing those elements. Now, I'm taking a little extra care with the fingers here, because you want to make sure that those are this falsehood, this backdrop, you want to get those as clean as possible, so make sure that it doesn't have any carryover. Now we're going to just drop in our background behind it. Now notice I'm putting it ahead of it and then just dropping the character behind my character and then pulling in the frame. Now on the frame, I've used the quick selection tool, selected that, and then I've inverted it during my select mask option. There's a little button on the right column there down at the bottom. It says inversion. You want to click that invert to make sure that you're getting just the elements that you want. Now drag and drop this in, but as you do, notice where her hand placement is. She's got it slightly off center. It's the crooked angle there, so you want to make sure that you're matching that to the hands. Now the head, we can always, this is something I noticed that when I was I've done this a couple times now, when I'm porting it back in, there is that little bit of a shadow line that's going around the outside. I have to make sure that I take that away. And then as I'm doing this, I want to use the opacity level, lower the opacity as I'm chasing out sections of the frame so that I can see what I'm erasing much easier, and then bring it back up. Now fill, I'm using that one to how much of the image do you want to add that in, using the fill versus the opacity. The fill I think is really good if you're trying to, you got two different light sources. Picture that I took of my character, she was in a lit studio, so there was just studio lights. The backdrop here, that natural light, that dusk element, you want to take away how much of that light is actually coming through. Now, yes, we're going to be using curves to change up this as well, but I also want to add in a fill section because then it gives a much more of a shadowed tone to it as well. Also, it's easier to see. Now, as we're adding that curves element in there, and I'm using that curve to change the lightness or darkness of that color, that element, give it that different, you want to match that light source that it's going with for the background image, so everything works together as one whole piece. Now we're going to jump into part 2 of this assignment, and I've added a different image on the interior of that frame. So what I've done is I've got this nice deck that the character's standing on as it drops back into the water behind her. I wanted to have something that would also mirror that in the interior image. So dropping in a road that's just kind of in a field to give it that juxtaposition of two things happening that are balanced together, and then going in and changing the curves, coloring levels within that one image. Notice as I'm doing that, the big thing that I want you guys to understand is you can click and isolate that layer above it by clicking that little arrow next to the bottom edge ribbon of that image. You have a little drop down arrow that goes to just that one cell. And then going in with a little bit of paint and just adding a little bit highlights of color so it can get this fade effect around the character, and then just going that in and changing how much fill, how much opacity that is on that coming from that element. I definitely wanted to showcase the light coming off of the painting, so that kind of married off with giving that juxtaposition of the interior images in sunlight, the outside image as a night scene, and you have that duality between the two. I always think that's a little more interesting. So chasing in a couple light rays in here just to finish off the overall piece, and that takes care of it.
Okay, taking photos, putting them into a computer, making some new piece of artwork is not a simple cut and dry process. There's a lot of steps that are there. So knowing those steps make your life a lot easier, and I hope that you got some creative endeavors out of this. So let's go ahead and wrap up like we usually do. So let's go ahead and take care of the homework. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share on all the various platforms. Don't forget to get our message out there. If you know it's somebody else who could also use this tutorial, shoot it their way. Make sure that they take care of their homework as well. Don't forget, if you have a question, comment, or concern, you raise the hand down in the comments below. As always, if you have an idea, something that you want me to teach, happy to do it. Just shoot me something in the comments or send me an email. And as always, I will see you guys next class. Later, guys.